Hey guys, how's it going? Today we have a little bit of a different episode. Basically, I'm gonna fly back to the US. So I was able to fly from the US to Europe, and now I'm flying back all the way home to California. And coming here to Europe wasn't the easiest thing to do because of everything that's happening in the world. So I thought that it would be interesting to kind of maybe make a video about it and show you guys exactly the process that you would need to go through in order to actually be able to travel. Basically, I have two passports. I have a Belgian passport and an American passport. And that's the only reason why I was able to actually travel during these times. Sometimes there are other ways of traveling. If you have maybe some business, like a business visa, or if you have to do some work in a certain country or there's an emergency, you're able to get certain authorizations to travel. But without these passports, it's going to be really, really difficult. And by the way, this is filmed during February 2021, and this is going to be my experience. Let's see what happens. One thing that you're going to have to take into account if you're traveling to Belgium, or probably any other place in Europe, but I'm going to take Belgium as an example because this is the experience that I have, is that in order to actually get a test, in order to fly, which you need to get 72 hours before the flight, you're going to actually have to go on this website right here. But the thing is that I was lucky to be able to register on that website because I have a Belgian ID since I was born here. Now, of course, if you don't have a Belgian ID, you can still take a test. It's just a little bit more complicated. You have to go to a doctor, get a prescription, then go to the testing center, and then they're going to give you an appointment, and you're going to have to pay also beforehand. One good thing that I wanted to mention about these testing sites is that they are super well organized and can easily be found throughout the different regions of Belgium. Just in the city of Brussels, they offer 8 different locations, which are very central and can easily be accessed via public transportation. Behind me, this is one of the typical testing centers that you have a choice to choose from once you go on the website. I chose the one next to the metro station Merode, simply because it's the closest one to my place where I'm staying at right now. And yeah, it's super duper fast. You're basically in and out in 10-15 minutes at most. There's not much of a line, and it is an appointment after all. My experience with this place couldn't have been better. I arrived at 3 p.m. for my appointment. The people working there very quickly scanned my appointment barcode, and they swiftly showed me my way to the waiting line. Also, before getting tested, they gave me a testing kit that had a small plastic test tube and the infamous swab. The location was pretty empty, and within a minute or so they led me into one of the rooms. The test that they perform in this location is the PCR antigen test, and they do it through the nose. But honestly, it's extremely fast and not really too invasive. When registering, you have to let them know if you're doing the test for travel reasons. If so, the test will be expedited and given within 24 hours. Do bear in mind that if you are flying, the test needs to be performed no more than 72 hours before your flight. So yeah, getting a test is not the most pleasant of things. They put a stick in your nose and yeah, you might shed a few tears basically. But it is pretty simple, in and out really. And yeah, I'll be ready to fly. By the way, if you are entering Belgium from a foreign country, you are obligated to take a test on the first day returning to Belgium and on the 7th day after your return. It's 5 a.m. and I'm heading to the metro. This is the first part of my trip. I'm going to go to the train station so that I can take a train to Charles De Gaulle in France. And then from there I'm going to go to London, and then from London to LA. I could have taken a plane from Brussels too, but after speaking to the airline, any flight from Belgium would have required a 24-hour layover in another city due to the limited amount of planes. Even though many travel advisories are given on television and newspapers, the truth is that you will still be able to travel. Getting to Charles de Gaulle with a train couldn't be easier. Many trains leave from Gare du Midi in Brussels. Since there is good public transportation in Brussels, getting to Gare du Midi was a breeze. I was staying in Etterbeek and I arrived at the train station in about 20 minutes, even though I left my house at the super early time of 5:30 a.m. Okay, I'm at Gare du Midi now. I need to find the TGV, and that'll get me to Paris. Before leaving the country, there are a couple of papers that are also required to be filled out. Basically, each country requires travelers to fill out a short form declaring on their honor that they are required to travel and that they do not have any symptoms. Since I was passing through France, I had to fill out a form for Brussels and also one for France. In total honesty, nobody asked me to see these forms, but it takes about 5 minutes to fill out, so it's better just to do them. I'll put links to the forms in the description of this video. Being a little bit on the cautious side since flights are limited, I did end up taking a slightly earlier train thinking there might be interruptions, but honestly the trains are so frequent that being super cautious isn't really necessary. The train takes about an hour and 27 minutes from Brussels to Paris Charles De Gaulle, and the train literally stops at the airport itself. Here I am at the airport station of Charles de Gaulle. For the moment, I haven't had to show anybody any PCR tests. Everything's been smooth sailing. We're going to see what happens in the airport. I'm pretty sure that to board the plane they're going to ask me something, but for the moment everything's been smooth and easy. Once at the airport, finding the check-in counter is pretty simple. I had arrived a good 3 hours before my flight because I was flying internationally, but since my initial flight was from Paris to London, it isn't really considered international, so arriving at the check-in booth 2 hours prior to the flight is best. I ended up having to wait a good hour before any British Airways employees even opened the check-in desk. By the way, if you're flying through England, there's also a travel advisory form that needs to be filled out prior to arrival, even if you are simply transferring from one flight to another. Once again, I'll give a link to the form in the description of this video. This form cannot be filled out more than 48 hours prior to your arrival or transit flight going through London. If you don't have it filled out, the check-in counter will let you scan a barcode on your phone that will let you fill out the form at the airport. So success. I managed to check in. Now I'm heading to my flight, and yeah, they did finally ask me for my test, and yeah, so that's that. They do ask for it when you do check in, but it's not that hard. Just have to have the paper, and yeah, I'm going to my flight. One thing that I must admit about flying during these times is that apart from all the uncertainty and negative news that is broadcast in the media, the actual airports themselves are functioning very well. And since most people aren't flying internationally, all the international flights that I've taken have been pretty empty. As you can see, well, basically the airport is pretty darn empty. There are people, obviously, but compared to normal times, I would say that it's maybe at least half capacity. And I'm pretty sure that my first flight will have a lot of people because it's a non-international flight. But once I get on the international flight, I can kind of foretell that it's going to be at least half empty, or if not 2/3 empty, but we'll see. I did find that all flights within Europe, or just flights that aren't international, may get a little crowded. That's mostly due to the fact that there are fewer flights. For example, my flight with British Airways from Paris to London was the only flight that day. So yes, once you do get the flight, it's easy, but many flights are also cancelled, making travel delays much more prominent. A short 45-minute flight from Paris to London, and I found myself at Heathrow Airport. So I did find out that my flight is going to be departing from one of the B gates, and in order to get there I have to take some transportation, a sort of little train, and look at how steep the stairs are. Like literally, they are so freaking steep. I'm not used to that being from LA, but I guess in London they always have really, really steep stairs, and that's really interesting to see. Having been to this airport many times, I must say that even though it's big and can seem a little overwhelming at first, navigating through the terminals was extremely simple. A quick check on the departure screens showed that my specific flight was leaving from gate B46, which was at Terminal 5. After arriving at Terminal 5, I was extremely surprised to find myself in pretty much a ghost town of an airport. Look at this airport, it's so empty. And honestly, flying during this time, it is scary because we hear so much stuff on the news, but the airport's empty, so catching anything, it's pretty much slim to none. There's just nobody. And every flight I've taken up to now, there's always been one or two places on either side of me that are empty, so I am social distanced. The only flight that I did have where there was a problem was the small flight when I first came to Europe, where it was between London and Belgium. There was a lot of people. But apart from that, every other flight I've taken, they've been empty. So I think that's the difference between an international flight and then a continental flight. So whatever's interior short, there's more of a chance of having people, whereas anything that's international, well, look at this place. The terminal is empty. There's actually, I thought there was one flight going, but there's actually 2 flights going. That's it. I quickly found my way to gate B46. After a short period of waiting, one of the British Airways crew members handed out to each passenger a form entitled Passenger Disclosure and Attestation to the United States of America. This is another form similar to the forms I filled out for Belgium and France, declaring that by signing this paper, you are swearing on your honor that you do not have any symptoms of illness and that you did get tested within the 72 hours prior to your boarding the flight. Again, this is just a formality and takes a really short time to fill. Okay, this is the last leg of the flight. I was pre-selected again for security, so they made me take all my stuff out of my luggage and I put it back in. It always happens to me, but I'm gonna board the flight, so I don't care. It's fine, whatever it is. As long as I get back to America, I'm happy. Once I boarded the flight, it was only a third full, which reinforces the fact that flights are pretty safe during these times. I even ended up getting myself 3 seats, which was a godsend. As you can tell from the images, the plane is not that full, but there are some people. For the moment, I have 3 seats to myself, but let's see what happens. It would be nice to actually be able to lay down and take a nap, maybe watch a movie, relax, and wait to get back to California. The flight from London to Los Angeles takes around 10 to 11 hours depending on the winds, but thanks to the onboard entertainment and the fact that I had so much space to myself, the flight really didn't feel that long. I was also able to look out the little window of the plane and enjoy some of the almighty scenic views simply from being so high in the sky. Plus, there's always some excitement knowing that after so much traveling, the final destination is literally just a few hours away. Just for fun, here's a beautiful aerial view of the city of Los Angeles from the plane. As you can see, the city truly goes on and on forever. I finally made it to LA. It was a very long trip, and yes, they did question me a little bit when I got here. They wanted a negative PCR test and of course the customs, and then they also had another form that they gave us on the plane. But apart from that, it was pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and here I am in America. On a final note, would I recommend it to fly during these times? Well, honestly, it's not that bad, but also take into account that you need dual passports. Also, there are less flights, so you have to be flexible on the travel dates, as flights might be postponed 1 or 2 days from the original departure date. Okay, that's it. I'm back in California, and it's the next day. I freshened up a little bit. As you guys could tell, the trip was not that much different than during regular times. Just an extra test and a couple more papers to fill out, but everything went smoothly. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed watching this trip. And if you did, well, please be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave me a comment. Let me know if you're thinking about traveling back to Europe or back to America, and let me know how your trip went. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.